What's up guys, today is a double whammy review and I have my buddy Joe who runs the Passion for Tone YouTube channel to thank for sending me these two Synergy units to try out. I'll put a link down in the video description, so if you're not familiar with Joe's channel, definitely go and check it out. He's got tons of awesome gear and he also makes great content, so go show his channel some love. Okay, so today we're going to check out the Synergy SLO module based on the legendary Soldano SLO and the 800 module over here, which as you can guess is based on the Marshall JCM 800. Now I debated how do I want to run these modules, and the easy way would have just be run the Syn 1 into the loop return of the 800 and my Brittone SLO over there. But I think in the real world, if you've got either of those amps, you're just going to plug your guitar into those and enjoy those instead of using something like this into the real amp. The other reason I opted not to do this was because the loop on both of those amps occurs before the tone stack, so anything that you plug into the effects loop return will get affected by all of the EQ controls, and that's going to only kind of further color the sound. So rather than doing that, I'm going to be running the Syn 1 here into the Fryette power station, which is just a nice neutral 50 watt tube power amp, and this is going to sort of remove any sort of bias that our brains may be tempted to place on the sound if we were running this into the actual amps that they're based on. My boost of choice today is, as you can see, the JHS Klon, which is my favorite by far to run, especially into the SLO, but it also sounded really, really great into the 800, so we're gonna be using that in the video today. Power station is going into the aux box, which is loaded with the Marshall Vintage 30 cabinet model and a little bit of reverb, and that's pretty much it. Okay, let's hear some more of the SLO module here, and I will go to the Crunch channel here and then to the lead channel and flip some switches and kind of see where we end up. Alright, so as you can hear, this unit is absolutely nasty, and It does have a clean channel-ish, but you have to have it very, very low on the gain on this channel. If it's set to the crunch channel, I think that the writing on this is absolutely microscopic. If it's set to the crunch channel, just like on the real SLO, if you have the preamp gain very, very, very low, you can get a nice big full fat clean sound out of it, and I'm glad that the unit lets you do that if you want to. So you're not forced into using a crunch channel. You can have a clean channel in the crunch mode. So I like that. And man, once the mid-range on the lead channel gets past halfway, this thing just roars in a very authoritative and powerful way, but it's still very clean and clear of a sound, and I love that. It sounds awesome. Okay, let's go over to the 800 unit and hear what that sounds like. Okay, I've got the 800 module plugged in, and the nice thing about this compared to a real 800 is that you have channel switching. Now, you do share an EQ here, but you have two different gain controls, one for each channel on the module, and you also have a switch over here that you can brighten up or darken the sound however you want. It just adds a little bit more sparkle depending on the kind of flavor that you want on either of the channels, and that's kind of it. You have a gain control, shared EQ, and a volume control for each channel, and that's pretty much it. So I've got the first channel here dialed in to a clean sound, and the second one a higher gain sound. So let's hear how that sounds. Yeah, it's even brighter. It's brighter even with the treble all the way down. So if you really want a bright sound, you have that option there. This is just a much more pleasing top end to my ears. All right, let's actually back the gain on channel 2 down, and we'll see where we go in terms of like how it kind of increases in gain from sort of where we're at. I think that the bright cap that they use in this functions very similar to how the Friedman Plex bright caps operate, where the higher the gain goes, the less it actually impacts the sound. I'm willing to bet that that's how it is, because with this on, the impact is not nearly as hard as it was with the gain back down here. So that's probably how it works if I had to guess. so here are my thoughts after spending a little bit of time with each of these units. The SLO module has a much fatter and smoother singing sound, just like the real SLO. And the 800 module, it has a more raw and aggressive sound, just a little bit more unrefined compared to the SLO module. Now, on one hand, I do like the fact that on the SLO module, you get a dedicated EQ for each channel. That's very handy if you really want to dial in each channel very specifically, and the fact that you have the crunch and lead mode for each channel instead of just a gain knob, which, I mean, honestly, for the 800 module, it works. It does the job, and I really don't think that it needs a low gain, high gain switch for this module. The normal and the tight control on the SLO module, though, that's very handy if you want that really thick singing lead sound that the SLOs just are famous for. But I like the way that you can also not have that, and the real SLO doesn't have that, at least mine doesn't, where if you crank the gain up, you're getting that really big, kind of like beefy, fat singing, saturated high gain sound. And on this unit, you can sort of mitigate that with the switch flipped into the tight setting, where it kind of pulls that bass and low end response back a little bit and tightens it up like the switch implies. So that was a nice welcome change from what I'm used to with my Brittone. And with the 800 module, I really like this bright switch that you can use to really fine tune that top end. If you're once you're past halfway on the gain control, it's not an offensively aggressive and brash sound. And I think with it engaged, it really lets you sort of fine tune how that top end, that really upper sparkle top end, reacts with the treble control and the gain. So I like that control is there. And honestly, just like with the real 800 and with my Jubilee and the Nitro, I really don't miss a second EQ. If the core sound is good, you really don't need two different EQs. And I mean, the same can be said because the SLO is a single EQ amp that's shared between both channels. This is just a nice kind of bonus to have an EQ for each channel. But honestly, even if it didn't have an EQ for each channel and was more like this, I think this would still be a fantastic unit. So both units sound great, and this just continues the track record of these Synergy modules with my own experience after having played maybe 7 or 8 of them now. All of them sound very good, and again, all of them sound very different. And while they don't sound exactly like the amps that they're built after, like this doesn't sound exactly like an SLO, this doesn't sound exactly like the 800, but they get the vibe right. And I use that word a lot, but it's sort of the mentality and the approach and the mindset that I have with these different devices, sort of getting the spirit of these amplifiers really kind of captured very well. And for a lot of players at the price point that this Synergy stuff comes in at, that's a perfectly acceptable kind of trade-off to not have a 100% authentic sound, which for some of these, it's very, very close to the real deal. But again, you're missing the power section of the amps that make kind of these modules famous. Like the SLO power section with the De Young transformers, like it's a very powerful and potent, clean and articulate hi-fi power section. And the 800 power section, it's very, very different. It's a much fatter and beefier, and just it saturates a little bit more. So it's hard to kind of get an accurate, 100% accurate sound without part of what makes the actual amplifiers that they're modeled after. It's hard to capture that magic of those power sections with just a preamp module. But again, the voice and the vibe it's there. And if that's good enough for you, then you can save a ton of money with this stuff. Okay, now, so if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I take pretty much everything that I review onto stage to see how it performs in a real world, like a gigging musician's environment. And since our next show is at a smoking bar, out of respect for Joe and his gear, I've elected not to take this stuff on stage, but I did connect the Syn 1 into the loop return of my Mark 7 and then ran the speaker out from the amp into my Mako 112 cabinet like I do on stage. The DI line out from the Mark 7 runs into the Quad Cortex, which uses a pair of the ML Sound Labs impulse responses for speaker simulation and stereo effects for a nice big stereo sound. One output from the Quad Cortex goes into the ZLX monitor that usually sits behind me, and the other goes into the house, and that's kind of how my live rig works. Now, while testing this in the studio, I ran it into the audio interface, which is sort of a stand-in for what would usually be our PA for a nice big wet, dry, wet setup here in the studio. Now, while this obviously can't replicate the experience of being on stage with a drummer and a bass player and a big QSC PA system, it did let me hear each module at stage volumes with my full gigging setup. It sounded really big, nice here in the room with both modules, and obviously with a PA speaker and the studio monitors, I still got that nice big stereo kind of like lush spread to the sound that I do get on stage. So it wasn't 100% accurate, but it gave me a really good idea of what it would be like if I had taken these on stage. Now, the Mark 7 is sort of impractical of a power amp as you can possibly imagine it could be. For me, it's a good solution for stuff like this at our shows, because if things just don't work out with a module on stage during sound check, or if I'm just not feeling it the first set, it's easy to just take the cable out of this N1 and plug it into the main input of the amp and just finish the show. The load box that the amp has built into it means that I don't have to bring my speaker cab if I don't want to, or if we're playing a venue that either doesn't allow cabinets on stage or doesn't have room for a cabinet on stage, the Mark 7 can still accommodate that. The direct line out, it lets me not need to bring a hot plate or a load box or a speaker cabinet or anything like that. I can just plug straight into the Quad Cortex if I need to. So there's a few safety blankets in place just in case things need to be adjusted during the show, which does happen from time to time. Okay guys, that is going to wrap up this video for the Synergy SLO and 800 modules by Synergy, and another big thanks to Joe for lending me these two units to check out for a while and to show you guys. If you already have hardware that's a part of the Synergy's ecosystem and you've been thinking about either of these modules, I will leave a link to Zound's website down below, their affiliate links, and again, those purchases, they help out the channel. I don't get paid for any of this stuff. So the affiliate purchases, they do give me a small commission on each sale, and you can use those links to literally buy anything on the website to help out my channel. And one note is, I don't think the 800 is in stock on Zound's website. There's plenty of other places to get it, but I do know that the SLO is on the site, so feel free to pick those up. If you're not if you don't have any of the Synergy stuff and you're just sort of now finding out about it and learning about it, they have a lot of different ways to utilize these modules depending on how your own use case is. So if you just have a studio and you want something simple, the Syn1 is a great little device. It can use obviously one module, and it has a built-in speaker simulated output, which it's okay in my opinion, but I really like using the line out into either a power amp and a speaker cabinet or into the aux stomp. It sounds great just running straight into the aux stomp or into the Quad Cortex for the speaker simulation. So it's a good entry-level point to get into these modules. And they also have the Syn2, which is a 2-unit rack mount module, which it's kind of does the same thing as the Syn1, except it has a second slot and it obviously mounts in a rack. So you can use that if you'd prefer something with an extra module for effectively 4 channels. They also have a 1-module little 20-watt head, which I absolutely loved. I think it's a great flexible little device, has a built-in impulse response loader. You can use it without a speaker cabinet, and it's a small little portable lunchbox unit that I used on stage, and it sounded great on stage. And if you're looking for something a little bit more powerful, they do have a 50-watt head with 2 module slots that you can use for, again, like 4 channels, a little bit more headroom, a little bit more punch and power out of that power section. Okay, that's gonna wrap this video up, and again, another thanks to Joe for sending these out. But before they go back, I will be working on creating neural captures of both of these modules, and also for you Nano and Quad Cortex guys, if you don't follow me on the Cortex Cloud or whatever it is, be sure to add me there and feel free to check out some of my other captures in the meantime. Also, I'm going to be capturing Tonex profiles for these modules as well, with different power amps and different cabinet models in the aux box, as well as a DI output of just this unit, the Syn1 unit, so that you can use the profiles both on the Neural DSP units and the Tonex unit. You can use those DI profiles with any speaker simulation that you like, whether it's an impulse response loader, or you can run it into your favorite power amp, your guitar amp, return on the effects loop into a speaker cabinet, whatever you want. I want to make these packs as flexible as possible for you guys. Now I'm working on setting up my website to facilitate easy and kind of professional ways to buy these capture units, but for the immediate time being, if you want to get your hands on these, feel free to reach out to me via email. I'll have the address down somewhere in the video description. So you can definitely reach out to me that way. Okay, that's going to wrap up this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.